This is DW News Africa. Coming up on the program, who decides who gets medical care in South Africa? Anti-immigrant vigilantes are accused of putting lives at risk as they block hospital access for foreign nationals. The campaign is proving a handful for the South African government.
There's nothing illegal by saving your country, and we will not stop.
In Cameroon, families mourn their loved ones who've been casualties in Russia's war on Ukraine. We discuss why they and other Africans end up on the battlefield thousands of miles away. And in Kenya, navigating public transport is a hassle if you're in a wheelchair. We look at the private and public efforts to improve accessibility in the country. I'm Tomi Oladipo. Welcome to the program. Doctors Without Borders has warned that an anti-immigrant group in South Africa known as Operation Dudula could be endangering lives as it blocks immigrants from accessing healthcare. Now, the country's constitution guarantees healthcare access to everyone, regardless of nationality. But Operation Dudula argues that government-funded facilities should only serve South Africans, and it's vowed to escalate its actions. DW's Dan Hawker has this report from Johannesburg.
Which government? Which government? Which government?
Operation Dudula vigilantes are in the ward. This video was filmed inside a South African hospital. They are forcing immigrant patients to leave this public health facility. Confrontations like this have become commonplace at state-run hospitals. Operation Dudula are blocking immigrants from accessing health facilities. Just last week, 3 of the group's members were arrested for similar actions. The organization says it won't be stopped by the police.
There's nothing illegal by saving your country, and we will not stop.
DW visited a clinic in Katlehong, east of Johannesburg, and found Operation Dudula vigilantes conducting an illegal screening process. They were demanding the identity documents of anyone wanting to enter. The organization says immigrants should not benefit from state-funded health facilities.
Okay, our aim here, we're trying to protect our facilities in South Africa. We're coming to check the people that are coming in the clinics is original South Africans, or they've got a legal document to be in South Africa.
This woman showed her Mozambican passport, and Dudula vigilantes refused to allow her in. The security at this clinic aren't doing anything to stop these ID checks. They say it's not part of their job description. The presence of Dudula implies that anyone who can't produce identification isn't allowed into the clinic. But to be clear, there's no official government policy that says anyone has to produce identification before entering a health facility. And the South African Constitution is very clear that everyone has a right to healthcare regardless of nationality. I challenged their regional convener with the text of the Constitution.
Everyone has a right to access healthcare services.
Yes.
Everyone.
Yes.
Including, then it continues to say, including reproductive health care. Right? Now, what do you say to them?
I said, they say everyone, except the...
No, there's no exception.
Okay. If they say everyone, you must understand here. If you say you're talking about the everyone, the South African,
No, it's not talking about South African. It's
everyone.
Everyone
Let's
is
go to
open.
Yes.
Everyone is open. It doesn't say every South African.
Yes.
It says everyone.
South Africa has become a hub for immigrants from other African countries seeking better opportunities. Some immigrants have made South Africa home and have had children here.
I'm afraid about my baby not getting immunization. What's gonna come? You see, and we don't have money to go to the private clinic because it's too much expensive.
Some South Africans are concerned about Dudula's actions.
Some people are really sick and they don't have money. They need help. So what will happen if someone dies there?
Doctors Without Borders warns of a pending health crisis, saying many of those being denied care suffer from chronic illnesses like diabetes and HIV. While the South African government has condemned the action, rights groups argue that more needs to be done.
Without the police intervening, it does mean that they are colluding, that they're witnessing unlawful acts and are not taking any action.
And Operation Dudula is promising to step up its actions. It plans to enter formal politics in the near future and says it will start targeting immigrant children attending state-funded schools in 2026.
Now, the government's been in the spotlight over its inability to contain the situation. I spoke to Foster Mohale, spokesperson for the South African Department of Health, and asked whether his office shouldn't be treating this as a major concern.
No, definitely. That's why what we have done is that we have informed all our provincial managers to say anyone who happens to any health facility which experiences protest actions which interferes with access to health care, they must immediately inform the nearest police stations, the commanders, to ensure that they deploy the police to the affected health facility to uphold the law, to ensure that the protests, they do not interfere with access to healthcare facility. That's why you see in the recent actions which led to the arrest of some of the members of Operation Dudula, the police, they responded swiftly, which we appreciate, and we've agreed with them to say, please, let's ensure that there's a consistency across the country, not only in those few facilities. And we are on the same page with the police because they know their role, that they need to enforce the law.
Doctors Without Borders says it has witnessed healthcare workers and security staff working in collusion with these anti-migrant groups. Has your ministry engaged to address xenophobic action and rhetoric among healthcare workers?
We've heard those rumors like you are saying now, and we appeal to anyone who has got a shred of evidence which confirms or suggests that our healthcare workers have colluded with members of Operation Dudula, and so that we can be able to act accordingly. But until such time we receive tangible evidence, it's going to be difficult for us to act according to those rumors. So hence we say anyone who has got the evidence, they must share with us the evidence so that we can be able to act accordingly, precisely because our healthcare workers, they signed or they took an Hippocratic oath which says they will never discriminate against any healthcare user based on nationality or any reasons. So they are going to uphold the oath, a Hippocratic oath, and the Constitution and other laws of the country. So where we stand now, we don't have any evidence to suggest that our healthcare workers or some of our healthcare workers, they are colluding with members of Operation Dudula. So we appeal to anyone, including yourself and Doctors Without Borders, to share that evidence so that we can act accordingly.
Mr. Mohale, have you been able to do some digging into and find out the scale of this problem and how many people have been, sick people have been denied healthcare because of this Operation Dudula?
Look, there are only few, these actions, they only occurred in a few health facilities around the country, mostly in two provinces, the province of Gauteng, which is the most populated province in the country, and the province of KwaZulu-Natal. So far, based on the reports that we have received from our provincial counterparts, this only happened in two provinces, but also not across the province, but in isolated health facilities. But that doesn't mean we must relax as the authorities. Hence, we try by all means to communicate with the law enforcement agencies and other stakeholders in the society, just to work with them in order to quell tension, because we know that South Africans are not xenophobic. We encourage anyone with concerns to raise those concerns within the confines of the law, because we are not a xenophobic country.
Mr. Mohale, you say these are isolated incidents, but it almost sounds at the same time that you're saying it's beyond your powers and you're appealing to everybody possible to help. I mean, on the one hand, you sound helpless, but also you're saying this is isolated.
Yeah, no, I can assure that I'm not helpless at all. Even if this happens in one clinic, but the issue of preventing the healthcare workers, it is a security issue. It's not the health issue. It's a security issue. It is a violation of the National Health Act. It is a violation of the Constitution of the Republic. Of course, people have got the right to protest according to the Constitution of the Republic, as long as they don't exercise their rights and violate the rights of other people. So the right to a protest is provided in the Constitution of the Republic, but we encourage those who exercise their right to do that responsibly without violating the rights of other citizens.
Okay. Foster Mohale, spokesperson of the South African Department of Health. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much.
Russia's war in Ukraine has drawn fighters from across the globe, but it's emerging that many of the Africans among them might not be volunteers. Some are being tricked or forced into joining Russia's forces, often being lured with promises of lucrative jobs. But the human cost of this recruitment is becoming clearer. In Cameroon, dozens of families have reported that their loved ones have either died or disappeared after reaching Russia and then ending up on Ukrainian battlefields. Among these are civilians and even soldiers who deserted the Cameroonian army in search of better opportunities abroad. DW's Blaise Eyong reports from Douala.
Beatrice Changong is in mourning. Her son, Brice Yundu, left Cameroon in December and went to Russia, where he volunteered to join the army. In February, the family received a letter from the army to say he had gone missing in Russia's Kursk region. His mother believes he was killed.
He went looking for a better life, a better future. He didn't have a stable job here. He worked as a subcontractor or a day laborer at the cement factory. He did whatever work he could find. He was happy to leave the country to find a job. He just wanted to make something of his life, but instead, he went there to die.
All that she has from his time in Russia are the few photos and videos Brice sent via WhatsApp. The 34-year-old had no prior military experience. His mother thinks he didn't fully know what he was signing up for.
They forced him into signing the contract in Russian. Does he know how to read the Russian language? He knows how to read French and English, not Russian. They sent him off to fight in the war. He was only trained for 4 days. What can he possibly learn in 4 days?
It's not clear what happened to Brice in the months after he enlisted, but reports suggest he was part of a growing number of foreign mercenaries fighting for Russia. A lack of work and opportunities in Cameroon means that young people are especially vulnerable to the lure of money and a better life in Russia. Agents use social media or word of mouth to recruit new soldiers for the Crimean so-called special military operations against Ukraine. There are no official statistics on the number of Cameroonians fighting for the Russians. However, according to one Cameroonian whistleblower, around 100 fighters have died since last year. This figure includes trained soldiers. In March, Cameroon's defense minister warned that Cameroonian security forces were deserting their posts to fight in Russia.
Russia offers these soldiers a minimum of €2,500. That's more than 10 times their salary in Cameroon. Seen in a context of army experience, where Cameroonian soldiers have acquired skills in various operations in recent years, they try to sell those skills to the highest bidder. And it turns out that the highest bidder at the moment is Russia.
Brice Yundu might have paid with his life for that salary. Beatrice Changong says Russia has still not provided any money, help, or word on what happened to her son. Without him, she now faces having to raise his children by herself.
Blaise Eyong, who filed this report, reached out to the Russian embassy in Cameroon for comment, but didn't get a reply. Now, to further explore this story, I spoke to security analyst Beverly Ochieng in Dakar and asked her why Russia is recruiting Africans and what roles they play in the war on Ukraine.
Well, based on the anecdotes that have been coming out, not just more recently, but over the period of the Ukraine war, many of the people who are being recruited are often in very desperate situations. Some of them have either been imprisoned, they may have been students, they may have been living in the country for some time, and they are approached covertly and promised citizenship, promised freedom in exchange for fighting at the front line. And because of their circumstances, they would be willing to cooperate. They come from a broad range of nationalities. So it's not really about allegiance or fealty or even sort of formal agreements between Russia and the governments that have been cited. For instance, there was an instance of a Tanzanian national, an Ivorian, a Senegalese, Somali, Zambian. It's a broad range of people who happen to be in Russia and who happen to be desperate enough to want to go in the front line. Many times they're involved in active fighting. Sometimes they do provide some logistical support to Russian forces in the front line. Some have allegedly been found in the Ukrainian front line, right at the very front, and they serve a variety of roles, but they're never in very upper positions. So it does also demonstrate those levels of desperation.
Can you give us a sense of scale? Do we know, or is it even possible to know how many Africans have been deployed for this war, whether in the front line or in any other capacity?
It is very difficult to get that because the governments themselves have not been very forthcoming. So you only get single anecdotes, handfuls of reports. There was a point where there was a list being circulated by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry where they suggested that tens of Senegalese, Nigerians, and Kenyans may have been deployed. Many of them are within Russia, so not necessarily coming from their home countries into the front line. And they could be student communities, they could be local communities, and they're very deeply embedded in those communities. And because the governments within here are not forthcoming with those figures, it's very difficult to get a sense of that. But the spread does give you an inclination that it's people from diverse nationalities and it's people who are in dire straits who are joining the front line.
I was just going to ask on that note as well about the governments of these source countries. Are they complicit? Are they powerless? Are they just looking the other way? Do they actually know what's going on with their nationals who ended up fighting?
I mean, it's interesting because I remember when the war broke out and there had been some calls in Senegal, for instance, by the Ukrainian ambassador for people to sign up and fight. And the government was very forthright that people would not be joining as quote unquote mercenaries. But when these other allegations came that people were involved in fighting in the Russian front line, there wasn't much commentary from the government. For the victims who died, like in Tanzania, in Zambia, the governments did say that they will investigate the circumstances under which this has happened, but there haven't been any tensions, geopolitical or diplomatic, as a result of these deployments. And ultimately because it's not seen as a government-to-government agreement, but it's seen more as individual choices by people who have found themselves, in many instances, on the wrong side of the Russian law.
Right, because at the beginning of the war, a lot of African countries did not want to openly pick a side. And I suppose with their nationals getting there, and if they say something about that, would that complicate their claims of neutrality in this conflict?
I mean, it may, and it may work in the West's favor. For instance, if African governments were more outspoken about nationals joining the front line of the Russian side. But then again, these nationals are not acting on behalf of those countries, which makes it quite complicated in being outspoken about it. The most governments can do is perhaps warn people against being involved in the conflict, whichever side it stands, and just making sure that people don't find themselves in instances where they're not able to either come back home safely or they're not able to remain safely in Russia, especially if they have been caught doing illegal things or they happen to be having issues around their nationality and citizenship, or they're staying in the country at a time of conflict.
Okay. Beverly Ochieng, thank you very much for your insights. Getting around Kenya's capital, Nairobi, is a daily struggle for people with disabilities. The public transport system remains largely inaccessible as commercial buses and minivans are not designed for wheelchair users or others with mobility challenges. Kenya has a new disability law that promises change, but its implementation will be a major test. For now, one family's personal experience with disability has birthed a business trying to fill the gap. Our East Africa correspondent Felix Moringa reports from Nairobi.
This is how Kenyans with disabilities have to get on and off buses. Elvis Otsiula works as a customer care agent in Nairobi's central business district.
Waiting to be lifted up to board the vehicle, and then to be lifted down while alighting, it's very tiresome, and also it lowers somebody's esteem.
He has to go through this humiliating process every day because the buses are not designed for wheelchair users. Wilson Kamau was a bus driver. His vehicle was in an accident which left him needing a wheelchair. He says public transport access for people in wheelchairs is still stuck in the past.
Nothing, zero.
There's nothing that's changed. Getting on a public bus is very difficult, almost impossible for someone with a severe disability. Maybe people with some capacity can board it with a bit of help. But when you have a severe disability like myself, boarding a public transport bus is almost next to impossible.
This impossible situation prompted Wilson's son, Daniel Gatora, to be extra helpful while working as a taxi driver. And 3 years ago, he sold his car, took a loan and bought a mobility van to cater for people with disabilities.
The same challenge I saw at home with my dad was the same challenge I faced at work, where people with reduced mobilities used to request for vehicles and most drivers used to turn them down. And when then I got the ride request, they were amazed by how willing I was to offer that extra needed support and how patient I was even with them. And so that then informed what Ace Mobility is right now.
Now he operates a fleet of 20 vans and drivers working across Nairobi. The United Nations Population Fund says people with disabilities make up 2.2% of Kenya's population, close to 1 million individuals. Their rights are enshrined in Kenya's 2010 constitution, but there has been little provision. Bishop Jackson Kosgei is the vice chair of Kenya's Disability Parliamentary Association. The nominated member of parliament representing people with disabilities says that a new law should turn principle into action. It sets out deadlines for transport companies to make provision for people with disabilities.
There are only two things that makes certain gaps be met in society. Number one is the law, and which we have it now. Number two is the right people to implement it. The law itself now will speak to the transport industry, whether it is in private or public. So what will make them agree is the conditions attached to licensing for your operations.
Ace Mobility is banking on its personalized service. Wilson gets free rides in his son's vans. Everyone else has to pay. Daniel admits it's about 30% more than the normal ride-hailing apps.
Where the driver becomes your caregiver, and so they are able to walk with you to the exact floor or building you're going to. And so there's that particular extra touch. And then, so now what happens is there's longer wait time for us.
The new law's deadlines will not force companies to do anything for 5 years, leaving his farm one of the few options for people with disabilities in Nairobi.
That's it for now, but you can check out more stories on our website and social media. We'll leave you with these pictures from the recent Africa Fashion Week in London, which showcased everything from sustainable style to a collection designed and curated by artificial intelligence. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.